Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Charlena and I'm part of the IIBA Melbourne branch team, and I'm delighted to be your host this evening for our guest speaker, Maria Montgomery's presentation, The Art of Getting Business Analysis Right. I'll just start sharing my screen. There we go. Okay. I'd like to begin first of all with an acknowledgement of country. So IIBA Australia acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present with us today. Now, before I introduce Maria, I'd like to run through some general housekeeping for tonight's webinar. All questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions throughout, please utilise the Q&A functionality at the bottom panel in your screen, your Zoom screen. If you've got any technical support issues as the presentation is running, please also pop a message in there and we will try and address it as soon as it comes up. This webinar will be recorded, or is being recorded rather, and a copy of the presentation will be emailed to you within the next few days. Please note that the email that the presentation will be sent to will be the email that you registered with for this event. So it now gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight, Maria. Maria is a renowned leader, trainer, facilitator and coach that has trained over 100 individuals to strengthen their skills for higher performance. She has been running results-driven mentorship programs since 2014, tailored to individual and team needs, is a passionate speaker and actively writes articles for the Medium publication. Maria is an individual and team capability building expert who has a certified professional life coach, linguistic programming, cognitive behaviour therapy practitioner accreditation, a degree in business IT and a master's in accounting. Now, without further ado, let's get into the art of getting business analysis right with Maria Montgomery.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlena, for a wonderful introduction, and welcome everybody. Charlena will be actually helping me with sharing the screen of the current presentation. Which is the art of getting business analysis right. I'll just wait maybe for a second, Charlena. I can't see. I'm not sure if anybody online can see the presentation.
Can you guys see that now?
Yeah, nice.
Is that working?
No,
now?
not yet.
No, not yet.
How about now?
Yep, it's just started.
There we go.
Awesome. Technology, hey? I actually just recently did a physical presentation. That was a workshop actually yesterday in Adelaide. That was quite interesting. So it's good being physically, and now I've got to get used to technology. So anyway, welcome to the art of getting business analysis right. I hope you all have tuned in today because you want to learn another skill on how to actually get the business analysis right. So we go to the next slide. What I'll do first is provide you a quick overview on what I will be talking about today. There is a lot to cover, but I'll reassure you that we'll get there in time for any questions and queries. First, what I'd like to talk about is about business analysis and also the story that is around business analysis, around the evolution, how the whole business analysis came about. Then we'll talk about some of the current challenges and problems, as well as the impacts of those poor business analysis when they're done poorly. Then we'll look into the Getting Business Analysis Right model, which I have created over the years of working in this space. Then we will look at what does it take to actually get the business analysis right. And I've added an additional slide because it's quite important to talk about the BA competency and why we actually is important to have that assessment around how competency is and what's required. I do have a sample of what I use in my coaching experience and mentorship that I provide as an assessment, and then we'll have some key takeaways for you to take away. So let's begin. Let's go to the first slide. The art of getting business analysis right. I'll stop and pause there, and I do have a question for this group. What does that actually mean to you? I would like you to either write on the side or use our chat box, and I'll be curious to see, before we actually dive into talking about what it means, I'd like to hear from you. What does it mean to you? And don't be shy. You can put anything that you kind of feel is important. Shalene, I might rely on you to look at the chat. For some reason, I can't see it. Oh, here we go. Let's chat. If you can, people can use maybe specifically that you might. Sorry.
Sorry, Maria, I was going to say they can use the Q&A functionality because the messages are coming through there.
Oh, are they? Oh, is that why I can't see it? Q&A?
There's
people are saying they haven't got a
so
chat.
Someone said BA responsibilities and overlaps with other roles like PO and SM.
Awesome. Yeah. BA responsibilities. Yeah. And that's quite a key an important question as our role evolves in different agile environments. Timeliness, agile on time is important, completely accurate. Yes, very good point. Correctly identifying and underlying representing stakeholders' requirements. Business analysis, understanding business environment and needs and propose solution. Understanding what problems we're trying to resolve. Totally agree that will have a great impact on what the outcome of getting those business analyses right. Listening to the business and presenting them the interest. Very, very good points that you make. We'll park those points and then we'll reflect on them as we get through this presentation and see how they can help us get through and getting those business requirements done. If we can go to the next slide, that'll be fantastic. So the next slide. So if we go back to where it all began, sorry, I'm just having a few difficulties with my screen, if you bear with me for a second. If we go back to the story and the story that it goes, and it's important for us to have a think about how long the business analysis role has been in play, was once upon a time, believe it or not, in the 1940s. This is when the business analysis actually started as a practice. And where it started is, it was first, when it happened, is around when the programmable computers were birthed. So if we look back to in an era of where there was an overwhelming of information and data within university and government organisations, they were running out of space and you know, there's a lot of consumption, and they needed to work out different ways of dealing with data. It was at that point, and I found this out as a fact from IIBA in Bangladesh chapter. There was an article written about this, which drew to my attention, was that there were lack of communication skills, and communication skills around talking to programmers, understanding what the customers wanted. And at that point in time, they've decided to have a role business analyst, but the business analyst was mainly referred to as system business analyst, you might recall. I remember the day when I started doing my degree, bachelor degree in IT, which was 28 years ago, shows my age, ouch, in 1994. And I started my graduate, actually sandwich year at a company called Ansett, in the airline industry. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I somehow landed in IT industry, thanks to my father, who's I couldn't decide what to do, and he thought computers were the way to go. What I discovered over the journey of my experience, and at the time, that industry was quite male populated as well. I actually did not enjoy any of the programming side. I found it quite boring, and I used to get a few of my classmates to do some precs for me when it came to programming. But then going into the company Ansett, they started talking to me about business analysis, and I thought, oh, that sounds really like something that would suit me and probably my personality, and also just ability to talk to people and understand technology. As a child, I was also full on. Maybe my dad just thought that's where my career needed to end. With asking lots of questions, my analytical skill sets have played the role, big part of in my life in the past, and it still does to this day. So the purpose why I wanted to acknowledge and tell you and this, reflect on our evolution of business analysis, just shows our understanding how effective our role, how our role has actually changed, and it still continues to change with evolution of different project methodologies and different types, going from agile to waterfall, which we might have spoken before, discussing different domain business and also technical knowledge as well. So we'll go to the next slide. So what are the current challenges that we, or problems that we're facing? And I personally have faced some of these myself. Is what I find is a lack of centralised business analysis community. When I set up my team back at UniSuper with business, BA capability, what I found, the BAs do need a community. They need somebody to bounce ideas. They need to be connected, but they also need to discuss templates and ways of working and provide that support. So I was quick enough to actually create this business analysis community within UniSuper. I think it'd be fantastic, and IIBA provides really great community for us to, as individual and business analysis professionals, to get together. Inconsistency of business analysis approaches and outputs is another one that can be challenging as you're moving between different organisations. I personally have moved between banking sector to superannuation sector. I've done a little bit of work in health industry. I found every organisation I go to, I had to readjust. I couldn't always have the consistent approach how I delivered my outputs. Meeting project stakeholders' expectations, that can always be challenges depending on what industry you're in. For example, when you're in a superannuation industry, we do have typical, shall I say, stereotypes that have got minor, not necessarily know what business analyst roles do, or what deliverables are, and that they might have a different expectation. Then we have a constant planning, project planning, replanning, tight deadlines, projects not covering, the scope, not meeting the deadlines. So that constantly has that effect on business analysts. Consider we quite often that upfront, defining those requirements. Specific domain knowledge, I find that that's become even more apparent as our technology is constantly changing. Our environments are changing. We're also introducing a lot of out-of-the-box functionality tools. So we have to deal with vendors. Some companies do choose to outsource the implementation of some of those tools. And BAs are kind of conduit between not only your internal, external stakeholders, they're building those relationships with the vendors as well. Retention of competent business analysts, I think that's been quite apparent specifically in a current market. And what I mean by there's so many opportunities, people are moving, changing careers. I personally, being as in a manager role, found it quite difficult to retain retain the business analysis competency and strong business analysts. Then we have the lack of clarity of business analyst role and responsibilities. Quite often I still find that I have to still define that and get the stakeholders and other areas. Currently I'm in a marketing and growth area at UniSuper. I'm still re-establishing what actually business analyst role and responsibility is. And shall I say, one of the biggest challenges is understanding that we don't get used, like if you heard of a term jacks of all trades, because at some point in times, I believe we all end up becoming jacks of all trades, meaning we might have to do a bit of PM work, change work, or whatever's required to get us over the line. I'll go to the next slide. Thank you. So, impact of poor business analysis. The impact of poor business analysis can be actually quite drastic to projects overall. Studies, and I like to talk about facts a little bit at the moment, is that the studies have actually shown that rework can consume 40 to 50% of your total development time. This is based on the Charlotte study that was done in 2005. Requirements alone can account actually to 70 to 85% of rework cost identified by 1997. And also, I do follow a lot of, I'm not sure some of you might have heard of Carl Wingens, I hope I say his name right, on Medium. I do actually write articles myself on that publication, and he wrote a very good article where I got some of these facts as well, when bad requirements happen to good people. It's a very interesting read. If you have time, please go to Medium and have a look at that article. It just stipulates, and it's just looking at how much that 70 to 85% of rework with requirements, it's quite a big cost and error for the project. So some of the key impacts that I see and can potentially happen on projects is incomplete or incorrect requirements. At times we put requirements, stakeholders might quickly look at them. Again, it can be quite evident in agile projects as well, that we think they're accurate, but the stakeholders look at them later when they can, during testing and so forth. So we might miss some of that. Missing or incorrect features, some of that functionality at times, that can happen as well. We work at fast-paced and big projects, for example, things like, as human beings, things could potentially get missed. The big one, and I'm sure most of you will be facing this, is project scope changes. There's always the scope creep that can affect your project, and it's very important that we think about how we manage those. Business objectives might not necessarily be met, and if we find those a little bit later in a piece, it can have a huge impact if it's specifically like before go live date, or when you're doing a BVT testing, when the business get a little bit more visibility, or you might have different stakeholders reviewing or testing. Business disruption caused by missed requirements. At times, we've all been on projects that potentially, due to we have to go live, and sometimes you might need to apply the 80-20% rule. We potentially might go live and accept some of those defects, which might actually have a diverse or negative impact on the actual users, and which in some instances they might have to recreate additional manual work that they had to learn how to do. Unmet expectation can also result in that poor system adoption, that people actually don't want to use our system, or they're very negative about it, which really provides that really bad impact and poor business analysis work. If we can go to the next slide. So I'll take you through the Getting Business Analysis Right model. This is the model that I've put together over the years with my experience, and wanted to show the key elements, which in the next slide I'll deep dive a little bit more. But to me, the heart of that Getting Business Analysis Right that I've got in the middle It's all about having a governance. We need to have some kind of a governance, whichever organisation we work in order to ensure that we get that high quality. We also need to have the right structure. We need to make sure that we have the right structure for our team, for our stakeholders, in order to be able to deliver the high quality. Again, we're coming back to that. We don't want to be always seen as a jacks of all trades. Then it's about competence. If you look at on the right-hand side, it's having the right competency, not only within yourself, but also within your team. So build that competency where you can complement each other. And again, as I go through the next of the slides, you'll see how complex and how big our business analyst competency is. And there's a lot to cover. And you might not necessarily have the luxury to have experience in every aspect of a business analysis. You could be working as a business analyst, process analyst. We get a lot involved in process analysis or technical analysis. So you might not necessarily have competency in every space of what's required. To me also, and I've got a little heart, it's about relationships. It's about building those strong relationship, and trust with your stakeholder, your team member, making sure that you have the open and a safety, psychology safety, that you can have those transparent and also difficult conversations. And I think it's also very important that business owners own. You need to own your work and be proud of what you deliver. And then, not the least, the collaboration, that collaboration between the teams, between your stakeholder, between, even if you've got a few business analysts working within your team, is also very important. So I'll take you to the next slide, which actually deep dive a little bit more. So what does it actually take to get these right? To me, the first point, following on from the model, is around people. It's continuously communicating, whether it's going out for a quick coffee or lunch. Food always works well, that you communicate, and with that, you'll be able to build your trustful relationship with your stakeholders, your project, your team member. Being able to have those open conversations and getting them to understand why you're doing what you're doing. The next point is about structure. I find it's very important to have a structure, but not only just any structure, but actually the right structure, and structure that works for your team and organization. And this is setting up the right practices, and you can set up the right practices by following the first point, talking to your team, building that good relationship and understanding what works, what doesn't work for them, for that team. The standards, the right standards, and again, that will depend on specifically what projects you might be working on, whether it's a waterfall, hybrid and agile. I find I have been mainly involved in that hybrid methodology. It's actually service catalog, thinking about the services that business analysts can provide, can really build that relationship, particularly in cases where your stakeholders might not necessarily be clear on the BA role and responsibility, and also picking the right tools. Again, there's lots of tools that we can use. From your requirements management perspective, we've got Jira, we've got Confluence, we've got Word, and in some instances you might need to go back to basics depending on your stakeholder. And the next point, important when I talk about ownership, it's really important that you take ownership and pride in your BA work, but not only just your work, it's take a bit of ownership in the project as well. It's good to link that project ownership by the way of providing what adds value, making a clear understanding to your team, what value does BA work provide. And what does that mean for getting business analysis right? The first box is going back to the collaboration. To be able to effectively collaborate, we do need to make sure that we got the right people in a room. Right people in a room, whether you're running a workshop, whether you're running a meeting, on a one-on-one interview. So having an effective stakeholder matrix, I quite often personally, when I go on a project, I communicate a lot and lots of catch-up coffees with my key project sponsor, project manager, program manager, anybody I can think of to understand who needs to be involved. And I go backwards and forwards just to make sure that I haven't missed anybody. For example, if there is any existing process maps, a very effective and good way of actually understanding who needs to be involved is to look at the swim lanes if you've got a luxury of having process analysts and see where the impacted teams. We just don't want to forget anybody who potentially could have even a small impact of what we're trying to do. Having clearly understanding, so everybody can understand your purpose, your needs, more from a business analysis perspective, or maybe even an approach that you might want to use. And tune into your stakeholders and also system. We'll be about listen. I quite find a very useful technique using the listening techniques and listening to them and trying to talk that language. And also set the right business analysis expectations. And as an example, the story that I'd like to share with you is that I spent lots of time in banking sector, and I happened to be moving between different banking institutions. And what I found, I almost became an expert in the payment space, that I worked on a project that entailed me to work out business rules for a system called IMQ of how, when customer makes the payments, where actually that lands and how we reconcile the whole payment into the banking system. And what I've discovered, there's been challenges. One particular stakeholder that was an accountant by background. I do have an accounting background, but never practiced accounting, is that we just couldn't understand what he meant, and those debits and credits just did not make sense. What I did with him is I've done a big presentation with lots of tier ledgers and went through it with him to understand where everything balanced. What I found, this technique worked for him really well, and I was able to translate that information into the requirements and business rules. Going forward, I moved to another organisation and I came across another accountant type. And what did I do? I pulled out the same presentation and the same technique, and it did work really well. So I'll take you to the next point, which is governance. So as mentioned, what I will do is think about ensuring that you've got good governance in place. We need to design a high quality performance. And what that means is ensuring that you're clear on your scope, that you have strong requirements standard in everything that you deliver. And what I mean by it, it's very good to, I guess, from a consistency perspective, you'll have different team members writing things differently. We're all different people, we've got different techniques. It is very good to have what good looks like and what not so good looks like. I don't like calling it word bad, but for example, having what does the good requirement written looks like? What is the bad? What is the template? What does the good user story looks like? And what does acceptance and the whole user story look like in the bad requirement? Quality control and reviews I find are very effective, and make sure that you find some form of approval process. I know Agile can be a little bit tricky, and I've been on many different projects where we're trying to fast track and get things delivered, but I've always tried and found some way of getting endorsement by our stakeholders on what our interpretation of their needs are. And also conducting detailed groundwork in order so that you can capture requirements. You might need underground work done, so the change team, our change partners actually, get the information in, that they need. And my last box, but not the least, is competency. It's ensuring that you have, again, and I keep on highlighting, the right balance of your competency level. And what I mean by it, when you're setting up your teams, if you're a BA manager or you're in a team, or you might not have a luxury of having a business BA practice. Not a lot of organizations, particularly in the squad scenarios and Agile, is making sure that you have diversity of your business analysis skill set. For example, if you're working on a very highly technical project, you might have some team members that already had exposure to cloud and Azure, for example, Azure, which are quite big technical terms at the moment, and that team member can potentially support the other team member. They might not necessarily have that knowledge. You might want to have more medium level business analysts with support of the senior to lead them into some of those deliveries. So I think the right balance and having that assessment is quite important. Conduct your BA professional development. I'm constantly trying to build myself, and I always try in ways of where I professionally can, better myself. I have my own competency audit list of things where I want to get to, and I do rate myself, which I'll show you a little bit later. But it's very important that you continue to mentor yourself and find yourself a mentor and continuously develop. If it's those facilitation skills, put yourself on a facilitation course. I've found somebody within your organization that can help. And regularly undertake that competency audit skill. Keep on learning and seeing where you are. And one big note that I like to make is make sure that you're adding value and that you have a voice. Whilst your role is centered around making things happen, as BAs, we need to make sure we get things over the line. You should always have the autonomy to have a voice and make some suggestions. I think it's always added value, particularly as you're moving in the BA career, to make some suggestions on process improvements or how, stakeholders can actually reinvent. You'll get a lot of respect, and and it's good for that open, honest conversation. Now, this will lead me to the next slide. And wow, this is one of my favorite slides that I absolutely enjoy putting up. And let's reflect on what we have discussed so far. We talked about auditing our skill competency. The purpose of this tree is just to actually show how busy, and that's not everything. I have picked up some of the most key points and techniques. How busy are we? How busy is our competence? And this is even more important in getting business analysis right. And who said I've in the past read some articles that is the BA role diminishing? I know there's different hats that at times we carry, but I kind of feel that we actually even growing and there is even more needs. So I'd like to take you through and some of these, well, majority of these is aligned to IIBA BABOK 3.0. I strongly encourage you when you, I know it's a big Bible, but it is my go-to to provide, because it provides really good practices and standards for you to think about. So if I go through, the first would be the bigger leads. I call them the big leads. Planning and monitoring, for example, that's the very first phase, is when the organisation is thinking about having initially a project. Should they go ahead? They might have an idea. So I think it's quite important for business, and I see business analysts more and more, even in an organisation that I'm in, we are doing more planning, is what it will assist business analysts can assist, shall I say, is organising, coordinating tasks, talking to the stakeholders and making them understand what does it really mean and what BA work is involved. Where this comes from, if you look at the smaller league, like for example, number 1, and at the bottom I've highlighted those as some of those underlying competency that we need to think about as business analysts, is we need to use our strong analytical thinking and problem solving techniques. It's about your creative thinking, being creative as ideas, and we talk about initiatives, visualization, and consensual thinking. A lot of I'm a big fan. We'll talk about process maps a little bit later. Putting stuff on a paper, visualizing even the customer journeys, decision making, and also listening. Then we have strategic analysis, and that's where I find a lot of at one stage, I haven't seen them lately, but there was a one stage talk of strategic business analyst. I haven't seen that title for a long time, but essentially still a business analyst role. And what I see as very effectively, and I think we are very important in this phase, is to perform that collaboration with stakeholders so that we can identify a need of that strategic or technical importance. And what are the actual business needs that we need to satisfy? Again, some of the high-level business journeys can be very helpful, including process maps. You might start off with your current state, think about target state, from the level 1 to deep diving maybe to level 2 and level 3. I'm actually personally doing some process maps in a job that I'm doing at the moment myself, and I find customer journey is actually very effective with some of my stakeholders that are not that familiar with looking at the process maps. And important to mention, it's probably during the planning monitoring, a sticky point is a BA plan. So, and this will happen as you progress through your business analysis career, where you have more experience. I mean, everything takes time to understand how you can plan. And the plan will include, what does it mean? What are the deliverables? You know, how big is the project, and you know, what's required from a business resourcing perspective. So I think that all comes in play between the planning and monitoring and also strategic analysis phases. And we do refine those as we find out more information. I have personally found with my team that we had high views of what we think things are going to take, we estimate, and then we'll refine as we go through different phases. Because at times, as we discover more information, we need to update that. Then we've got the requirements elicitation phase, and that's obviously quite an important phase where we start deep diving and looking at our business stakeholder requirements, sometimes referred to as high-level requirements, and we start writing those requirements statement. To support that, some of the things that you might want to think about is your behavioural characteristics, you know, your trustworthiness, adaptability. You need to have your ownership, make sure that you own the work that you do. A list goes on, as you can see, there's a lot that is mentioned on this stream. And then we get into that requirements management. And requirements management is all about delivering that requirements when we get into a deep dive, and as Baba will make reference to solution requirements when you get to the detailed functional requirements. If you are on an agile project, you'll be deep diving into your user stories by acceptance criteria, scenarios, ensuring that we've got enough information for developers to develop, that our requirements are clear and concise, and that testers can test that and change can find the impacts so that they can produce their training material and change impacts as well. And in highlight all of that through requirements management, all the other phases, I have listed some of those techniques, and I know there is more. Some of the things techniques that you might want to think about is the fit gap analysis. I find they're quite important when we're going to look at a current and a target state, and we need to find a word, where are those gaps, pointing those out. NFRs, one of my favourite topic, so favourite and close to heart to me that I have written an article about that as well. And whichever project I go on, I always make sure that we have got a predefined and NFRs, and we know how important they are, specifically when it comes to that performance testing and ensuring that whatever we're delivering can support those non-functional requirements. The other techniques is the data modelling, obviously user stories, communication, and obviously one of our core skill set is being able to communicate. Listening to the people, looking at the body language. Sometimes body language with our stakeholders can take a lot. And now that we a little bit more physical, we are able to actually read some of the body language and see visually what the stakeholders are trying to say to us. They're being mindful by following those active, listening skills, interaction skills, and I put in meetings. Meetings are also found quite important when you attend those meetings to make sure that you've captured the detailed requirements and information that was discussed in those meetings very well documented, including your action items, so that they can go back to those stakeholders. And so these are kind of core skill set. Obviously, there's more like facilitation, teamwork, obviously negotiation, contract negotiation is also important. You might find your stakeholders with different points of view, and you're like a mediator in the middle. It's good to have and learn some of those skills, and I strongly recommend going on some courses. A lot of courses online that can support you in this space. And domain knowledge, business knowledge, also very important, and technical knowledge. What I have discovered over the years of my experience is that when it gets to that finance sector, there is that need, particularly when you're getting the product types, to have some of the domain knowledge or understanding of the business. If you're going on a project and you really want to in the finance sector, I do suggest that you do a lot of research and get into the jargon and the techniques or terms that are being used. And technical is another one. I'll call myself more the hybrid BA. I can jump into technical to a degree. For example, I have used and done a bit of data modeling to a small point when I was performing a bit of a technical analysis role, where I needed to understand, define the data, the business data, and the relationship. And the last one of my favorite, that is probably a hot topic for a lot of organizations at the moment, in information security. How important it is to understand and define, and ensuring as we're defining our requirements that we have that information security hat on. Not to mention, and I'm sure that everybody in this room would have heard about Optus breach lately, and how it can happen. So information security, I feel myself, is quite a strong field. I'm currently talking to my daughters, deciding what to do, and I feel that that's probably going to be even more and more important skill to have. And some of the other things that I guess I mentioned also around that knowledge, when it comes to technical knowledge, not only I keep on hearing about cloud, Azure. I have had team members that need to get involved in network and infrastructure projects as well, and they tend to be a little bit more in the technical analysis space, and I feel that more technical analysts might find that useful. So there is a lot to talk about on this slide, and I'm sure there is more, but I hope as a takeaway you can only see how important and how much we have to be skilled at. And where I reiterate that point that I made earlier was, having the balanced team or capability that you can leverage of each other can be important. And let's go to the next slide. So why is core competency important? I thought that was important to just touch on a little bit. So if we, yes, thank you. It's a little bit tricky going through the slides. Is competence often serve us as a basis so we can understand what the skill standards are. If you click on again, sorry, what is our ability to succeed? And also the last one is its measure of skills and knowledge. So what that potentially gives you some kind of a proven measure that you can use to prove the skills and knowledge that you have. And I have included a wonderful model that's been prescribed by IIBA, which is a business analyst competency model, which I encourage you, and there is a lot of documentation behind on that. I have based my training and coaching that I do with individuals that I have coached in the past, is that the competency model actually helps business analysis professionals in order to identify the skills, the knowledge. If you look at the big wheels, we covered some of those. It also provides you with the knowledge and some of those behavioural characteristics that you need to actually demonstrate at all levels as a business analyst. And I quite like that chart at the top, and I've used the rating system, but from your general awareness to being an expert and strategic. And the good thing about it just shows you exact skill set and a journey where you how to get there. It can actually track where you are, which I found really important even personally for myself in your career, and it can provide you information where you need to grow from your professional level, as well as, performing at the right level at the job that you're at. And I'll go to the next slide, please. So this is a sample of core competency assessment that I've personally used. I wanted to share with you just as an example of something that I found that has worked for me and an individual I've coached. It's really, I looked at the competence initially at the high level. It is aligned to a degree, not totally. I've grouped some of the sections with Babcock. But if you can align your high level components or competencies and personally rate yourself, do you feel like you've got the limited knowledge to being an expert, which I've done I find that rating on 1 to 5 works quite well. And then if we deep dive, that you find, okay, you might have limited knowledge in a certain area. If we deep dive to the next level, I've deep dive into each competence and actually describe what does it mean. And for example, for planning and monitoring, the skills that you potentially would need at business analysis approaches, business analysis plan. Let's rate ourselves. How do we rate, in a knowledge in those spaces, whether you might have foundational, intermediate, or advanced. And then this will give you basis and so forth. This is just an example, so you'll find yourself deep diving into each competency. But I've also found on the left side this quite useful as well, to kind of draw on a picture, and if you just click again, is business analysis approach capability. You might want to rate yourself. Are you high, medium, low? You might find, I thought I was a superstar, so I feel like I'm high and high in business analysis approach capability. It has taken me years of experience and opportunities to actually do that work. What I do suggest, if you find that you're lacking in certain areas and you just never had the opportunity because you end up being on projects that are just in flight, or you might just be getting to do the functional, you haven't had the opportunity to do the actual business stakeholders requirements, I do suggest to try and find yourself opportunities, which is I've put my hand up in everything that I did, and I acknowledge with my team that this is what I want to have the experience, let me do it, and I'll go and sign and get it validated. So always try and look for the opportunities that you can prove or do the doing. I find theory is okay. I learned the theory, but I'm more of a person that the doing allows me to learn more. And that's how I found myself getting to more of that expert ratings. And we'll go to the next slide, the lucky last. And the key takeaways that this whole, the art of business analysis is all about to me is I feel that business analysis is like a funnel. We've got all these ingredients that will go through, the 7 ingredients, which I'll go through shortly, that actually contributes to the art of getting business analysis right. If we look at all these components and make sure that we cover some of these topics and that you get these ticks in these boxes and getting it right, I feel that you can increase it, to 80% to even 99.9% of actually making sure that your deliverables are right. So key takeaway, the first one and foremost to me, and I'm very much a people's person, and over the years I feel that people, it's all about people. It's working very closely with your team members, it's working with your stakeholders and having those great interactions with them, having those trustful conversations, using your active listening skills and working with them. Then it's all about collaboration. So it's building those healthy relationships, those trustful relationships that you feel like you're working, even if you've got a different points of view, you might have to overpass that and start stepping into their shoes and trying to understand why they are certain way and what is the problem you're trying to resolve for them. Purpose and needs, it's really good to reiterate to our stakeholders, well, what is that purpose or a need of a business analysis approach? And also setting those right expectations day one when you start on that project. And the next one is knowledge. I do feel that our knowledge is important, whether it's your business and technical. We need to keep on keeping our skills up to date and continuously learning, researching, finding the gaps in your learning. Go on to courses, like if it's a technical, I find that Microsoft has got lots of technical free courses that you can get yourself certified or accredited. I personally found passion in coaching, mentoring, so I have decided to become a master of certified coaching because I felt that was area of my gap. Structure, so it's very important to have the right practice, tools or standards in your structure. If you struggle to come up with something and you need some support, there's always a lot of stuff on IIBA that you can leverage off and look into. Competency, making sure that you have got the right balance of your team, and make sure that you team them up, that you get that peer team working together, that you regularly catch up, build a peer community, understand what your knowledge is within your team. Quality is obviously very important, and it's quite often that I get PMs, I want that strong business analyst. Can you find me one that can deliver the quality and be on time? Yeah, funny that, but then they bring you scope creeps. Make sure that you do enough detail also where it matters is an important point to me. Share your data in some kind of a meaningful way so people can understand it. That's we can validate and ensure that there's quality in there. And last one but not least, and most of you will be familiar with a term done, especially if you're on your agile project, understanding why is analysis required is important. The why could be your initiative as what you're trying to resolve, but also why is that analysis required? What is the purpose of that analysis? Why do you need to do specific detail analysis? Understand how you're going to deliver it, in what format and so forth. Then when is it required? Is it this year, next year? How much time do you have, and what can you deliver in that period of time? And where, when it said is physically, or you might need to go to different states. Where do you want to meet? Is that, you know, by meetings and so forth. And most importantly, I think that having a right system for the project, or a right business analysis system or strategy for each project is important. I think you need to be humble, you need to be open-minded, try not to upset people. I know sometimes it can be difficult because we do have different point of view. However, the market's small, so you never know who you're going to bump. You know, I bump into the people that I worked in years ago at the same organisation. And to me, my last point, and we'll open up for the questions in a minute, it is not about being right. It's not about you being right. To me, it's about getting it right. And last slide, I thought I would just share with you is where you can find me. I'd love to hear from you. I'm always open for suggestions on LinkedIn. If we're not friends on LinkedIn, please let's stay in touch. I do have a Grow Guild group that we have a few discussions in, and any jobs come up, we talk about that or anything. And I do have also my website as well that talks about some of the services and things that I provide. But most importantly, what I like to say is I'm so passionate about this subject that I'm in a process of finalising my ebook. I've got a few people that I will be reviewing, providing me feedback. I was hoping to get it done in time for this presentation, but I have discovered that project with my behaviour planning does take longer than what you think. So, because I'm so passionate about business analysis, getting it right, I would hopefully be able to share it with you, and it'll be great if you can have a read. And thank you for your time. Over to you, Shalina.
Thank you so much for that, Marie. It was really interesting to see the current challenges, which I think many of us can relate to, and then looking at the way you interlaced collaboration, governance and competency, yet still had quality at the center of that. And I loved your competency skill audit tree. It was a beautiful way to represent a lot of information and you know, skills, etc., in a way that's very visually appealing. So thank you for that. We might move on to questions. So thank you to everyone who has started popping some questions up in the little Q&A box at the bottom. So we'll just start working through those. So the first question is from Grant. Can you share a little bit more later on the BA community building up, as I'm currently in the planning stage for my company?
Yeah, and I guess it can be a long conversation. I'm happy if we, you know, LinkedIn, if I don't answer everything, we can keep on talking, or we can catch up for a coffee actually if you like. What I've discovered that BA like the community sense. So we didn't have anybody, so I started to kick off an activity with a few senior BAs that were interested as well, and we kind of formed a group. And we started discussing the topics that we needed to kind of cover, and one of them was we had a huge a backlog of things. We went around first of sharing to find out where there is all business analysts within our organisation. We have since gone through restructure, so we do have a BA practice now, but at the time we contacted them all. We started organising, we initially did fortnightly meetings to get everybody in the room and talk about our key pain points, problems, and we came up with almost like a Kanban wall with things that we wanted to cover. And what I found working for me was that it wasn't just me kind of driving a leader. We had it was a team building exercise. So we all collectively together build our competency. We did like this assessment that I was talking about, and finding out where that was I guess, strong business analysis to kind of where we needed to build that capability. And so we started to go through that tune of the Kanban with lots of activities, and we started meeting the second week, and we provided action items and the why, understanding the why, I guess, is also important, and where our why was, because we wanted to do things better at our organisation, and we wanted to leverage of each other's work, and we ended up centralising our key topic, and I won't take credit myself, but I had actually I've actually had my other team members working through these activities. So we always assign each other tasks, and we found that that was a lack of understanding where all the requirements that we currently deliver, how we can work together. We came up with business requirements repository, and it was like an on-demand, and it took a lot of work to get it from, you know, the right tools, and we ended up going in a working group. So whoever had an interest in working on different initiatives, and we set ourselves deadlines, but, you know, by this date, we had a lead, and we just had people putting their hands up to kind of build that. But one of the key shout out was building this business requirements capability model, as well as getting from, like, we had meetings and representation from IIBA, including myself, offering the mentoring, coaching and teaming people. We did a bit of a team bonding as well, and we just continue. We still continue, probably less frequently. We meet once a month as a BA community, and then we also got a business analysis practice, like team meetings, where we catch up on work, and group chats. Like, we've got lots of groups. Somebody had a topic if they've got to do non-functional requirements, was another one we didn't have. So we built a centralised repository for that. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I'm just going in a
Rats replied and said, that's good, thank you, good to learn from that.
Yeah.
We've got another question from Anonymous. Hi, Maria, are you able to provide or show an example of a BA plan?
Yeah, so I do. We did end up, as part of this community, BA community, and also just helping with my team members, we came up with a template. So the way, an example that I can share with you, we've got a UniSuper has got, we've got a delivery plan, like that we need to, methodology that we need to abide by, or we had an external company came in and said, okay, well, during the concept phase, these are your deliverables that you expected to deliver. During initiation phase, you need to deliver, so forth. And within that, I worked very closely to kind of, initially during concept phase, they didn't, for example, have stakeholder requirements or high level requirements. I kind of gone, in order for you to have a project plan, you need to have stakeholder requirements, high level requirements. So as part of our planning, what we did is we've developed a plan, and that encompassed different phases and different deliverables, and behind those deliverables we've got tasks. So as a business analyst, what are the tasks? For example, facilitate workshop, gather requirements at the high level, and we've had a matrix that we kind of gone, if it's a for example, simple project, we might allow 5 days for those activities. If it's a complex or finger in the air, then we might base on our experience. So a lot of it was based on my experience that I kind of put finger in the air. We had a matrix. So to deliver those high level requirements, it would take 5 days and then we allowed a little bit of buffer for that complexity as well on top of it. For, I think it was 0.5%, shall I say. And that included requirements traceability matrix as well, because we might start thinking about that. And then we went to say initiation phase, and we'll put in detail requirements. And we had, our approach was hybrid, but if you, for example, on an Agile project, we talked about user stories. So my rough is said to write a user story, to facilitating, and we might say half a day per story, half a day to review. And again, we went by complexity of the project. And then we've put in, obviously RTM, build of RTM, non-functional requirements, for example. I've always allowed turned around about 3 weeks. And what I could show to the project managers is that that they don't rely on other requirements being delivered. Another BA can do it in time. We just need to make sure that they're in time, say, for testing team when the testing team needed them. And then we allowed a bit of time, I guess, probably not closure, because we don't necessarily need to be closure, but, you know, during the build test phase for any requirement changes. And that kind of allowed me to then, my matrix also included whether I need 1 or 2 BAs, how many people we needed to, and it also showed from the planning perspective that if BAs could drop off half, you know, maybe half the time towards the build and test phase, that I can start allocating them to other projects. So they kind of aggregated up to a higher plan, shall I say. So the PMs, you know, we can plan capacity. That capacity planning can be very challenging for the BAs, or not having enough base. But what I found that worked really well is presenting it to our project managers, so they know, you know, when you provide estimates, well, why do you need so much time? It's too much BA time. Those trying to squash your time. But if you can clearly articulate those deliverables and tasks that we needed to do, and based on that formula, you provide a bit of that balance. I hope that answers your question.
The next question is from Kelly. Thank you, Maria, for your presentation. One of the things I find interesting in the Agile environment is balancing quality versus rapid delivery of a product. Sometimes it seems if you get it mostly right, that's okay. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Maybe I'll use the 80%. 80% rule. Look, it can be challenging, and I have been running some AAC study groups for accreditation. I'm currently for AAC, and the topic that I think about is that avoid waste. You know, when we start talking about let's not deliver outputs for the sake of outputs, as long as they add value. I think what you can try as a business analyst, and look, I've been on those projects and I know what it's like, and I've been in a detail, and you kind of, that collaboration should help, but you might miss something, is probably working very closely and maybe clearly defining your requirements, like, for example, user stories, using screen mock-ups, validating. I personally still do make sure that I go back to stakeholder and quickly run them through, whether it's a Word document or via email. Is this what you mean? Even if they visually see it. But look, I agree. That's why I kind of gone, yeah, right. Maybe if you can get it 80% of the time. But maybe look at the quality from a perspective of the quality of the analysis and collaboration that you might be doing to ensure that you get the quality. They might not look presentable. I know stories can look in different ways, but if you set yourself up right at the start, that the quality is that you're getting the information right, whichever presentation you might use. I hope I answered that correctly. I'm going to be politically right?
I've also got Sarah, who are looking to revise our BA plan template. So I'd love if you could please send one out with the slides.
Oh, so you would like to see the BA plan? Sure, it is my work, so I can share it with you. Yeah, definitely. I've got a sample. We'll get your details, and I'm assuming I'll have these details, right?
We can get that down from the registration.
I mean, yeah, whoever's interested, more than happy to share.
We've got another question here from Anonymous. How did you build a requirement repository in your community of practice? What tools did you use? In our organisation, the requirements for earlier projects, BAU, are all over the place, like Network Folder, Confluence, Jira, etc. Could you please give us some tips?
Awesome. So I've had a lovely Wendy, who's Libya, reporting to me. It was like she was running the activity, and I was sort of leading it. We had a whole working group. We had a few people working on the piece, and we kind of did a plan. So, and the plan encompasses that we've first went out and to all the project managers. We do have like a project manager community to understand what is there. So we kind of did a stock take first. So we got the BAs on the task to go around and try and find, we had different conferences. We also had SharePoint where we actually downloaded all those, what was currently there. And what we've decided to do is we built we use Confluence, and there is an add-on. I'll have to get back to, I can't remember what the add-on was that we use, but we use Confluence to provide references into this one repository. And also we build that template for future business requirements documentation. And the template was for all the BAs going forward to interlink, and obviously that interlink into Jira. We use Jira as well. And with this add-on, we were able to actually, if we needed to prepare, one of the challenges that we still have with our stakeholders, some of them still want a pretty document. So we've kind of got this endorsed through our senior leadership. I think you will probably need support from your senior leaders to kind of accept this kind of repository, your BA approach, and get them on the line of what they're going to start looking at, because we just started. We literally got this whole repository, data repository, like I said, in the Confluence, and going forward, if we need to, we'll build, pretty documentation out of Confluence if there is a need. So we're finding that's currently working for us. We own it. So the other important actually thing is to mention that you want to have an ownership. I'll put my name because I'm always there. Like, we do have a lot of contractors that come and go within UniSuper, but that we put ownership, that we own, and also there's a process in place that as part of our meetings, we've got an agenda item to make sure that when these documents going through we talk about them, and we make sure that the final, version, that everything's kind of in this repository as well. And that includes non-functional requirements as well. The beauty of it is that we can search. So we kind of have got particular in a network, or a network, I'm talking about technical. We've got a lot of technical projects. If we want to leverage some of the requirements or things, even in a life cycle space, we want to try and leverage those requirements. We can actually search and see what good requirements looks like. Hope I answered, but I'm more than happy with anonymous attendee to ping me on LinkedIn and we can talk more.
We've had a couple more requests for the BA plan template. So Maria, if you're okay, maybe we can attach it with the slides and the recording that gets sent out to the registrants. So we'll get that for Maria, and that'll come out in the next couple of days. So I think that actually ends up sort of covering most of, here we go. We've got Grant. Hi Maria, have you ever worked on BAU and projects at the same time as BA? How do you balance BAU and projects? Sometimes business side take BA as magicians who can do everything.
Look, I see your point. When I built my team, and we did a bit of a restructure in our organisation, we started to kind of have got BAU kind of BAs that are allocated to BAU project and project work. So, and it can be tricky in a sense, because you've got to balance your time, but then those BAU project might not necessarily require you as a full-time. So we looked at a scenario where, depending on how big these BAU activities, we've got some system maintenance or some of those functional areas where we actually allocated a BA to do those pieces of work, but they find it boring. So what I do is find that kind of balance where we can actually allocate these BAs maybe 0.5% of their time on those BA activity and project, and where if I allocate it, because I was normally looking at allocating BAs, I would make sure that perhaps if they're on a smaller project, there will be another project, particularly in our technical space, for example, that didn't require full-time BA. We'll get them to kind of work on 2 projects, but smaller projects. So they'll maintain the BAU activities, and you know, maybe 30 to 40% of their time is, and where that potentially can work too is if projects are at the concept phase. And, you know, the BAs might not necessarily be required, you know, straight away, that kind of full-time activities. So that's kind of where we manage. And obviously priority is kind of, I guess, using your senses to work out, you know, where those priorities lie. I'm always transparent with my project managers, and if it's a BAU, you know, something you need to fix, it's broken, some of those might, you know, become higher priority, and communicating and having a plan is important. Okay, I think we got one more question.
No, that was around the BA template as well.
Okay.
So I think that was it. Did anyone else have any questions before we move on? And Marie, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, that was really really good. I really enjoyed answering the questions, and all of the questions that are coming through I've experienced in some point in time, and I know how tricky our world can be. So thank you for listening to me.
It's all right. I will just, before I wrap up, I'll just run through the future events that we've got, and then I'll do the final wrap up at the end. So let me hope that I share my screen correctly this time by hitting share twice. There we go. So just a little bit about the upcoming events that IIBA is holding. So 13th of October, which is tomorrow actually. So IIBA Sydney are hosting an online webinar working with lawyers on projects. And then at the end of this month, the Melbourne branch, so our branch, is hosting an online session on non-functional versus functional requirements. 27th of October, in Adelaide, face-to-face requirements and how to find them. And the 1st and 2nd of November is the Global Business Analysis Day event. And at the end of November, on the 23rd, IIBA Melbourne are hosting an online Secrets Behind AI Project Successes. And as always, you can register for these events on Eventbrite, and the link is down here with regards to where to find the list of these events. Call for volunteers. All the branches are always looking for volunteers in the different states. So IIBA Australia chapter invites your expressions of interest to join and support IIBA, and you know, from personal experience, it's a great way to meet people, gain another set of skills, and yeah, it's quite rewarding. So if you are interested, please pop your EOI in as well. So that actually takes us to the end of our webinar tonight. Just note that you are eligible for 1 CDU for your attendance. And just please keep your thank you for attending email as proof of attendance as well. And Maria, once again, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your insights, your experience and your knowledge with us. That was a really fantastic session. There's a lot I gained out of it personally, and I really loved the framework example that you put up for self-assessment as well. So that's something I'm going to have a look at for myself. So thank you again, Maria, and thank you for everyone for attending and for everyone who asked questions. The lectures are, the sessions are always great, the webinars are great, but we always gain a lot from the discussions, and those only take place with the questions that you all ask. So thank you to everyone who has asked a question as well. I hope you enjoyed tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you next time, I guess. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.